Welcome to the Pinning Combination Podcast. I'm KJ Pilcher of the Gazette, alongside Wyatt, Schultz of the Predicament, and longtime coach Dick Briggs. Right before the holiday season, we're getting ready for breaks for some people. The Midlands Championships are coming up, but you kind of wanted to do a little something different to kick things off this week.
Yeah, I wanted to do it with my officiating background now. I wanted to have a little fun today and start out by you make the call. All right, let's see if you can answer this question. I'm going to put it to these guys. They haven't heard it yet, but if you can see what your answer to this question is. All right.
I am a terrible test taker, so I'm sure this will go real well.
Yeah, and I have always had D- in school.
So you beat KJ.
Probably.
Okay. All right, here it is. Question is, in folk style, in a down position, if the down wrestler makes a move that puts his shoulders into the near fall criteria, should the official begin the count immediately for the near fall? Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. So, like, I'm down, you're on top of me, and I hit a switch, and now my back is in near fall. Should the official go and make the count right away? What do you think?
I would say yes.
I'm going to kind of go the route of something similar to a slip in either freestyle or Greco, where the person initiating the move fails to complete it. If he's the one trying, then they start neutral. I'm saying if the wrestler in the bottom position makes the move, that there is a reaction time for him to complete the move if it's not initiated by the top wrestler in control.
Okay, now, that being said, with both of your answers, and I'll get back to them in just a second.
But I thought that was a yes or no question.
It is, but let me get to it. But before I say that, I want to ask you this. How do you see it called? Because we see that pretty often. Do you see referees? Maybe I should ask that after I tell you the answer. Okay, so here's the ruling. And thank you, Bill Rolitz, for firing this out at the rules meeting to the officials this year at Benton Community. Here it is. When the defensive wrestler places himself in a precarious position during an attempted escape or reversal, a near fall shall not be scored unless, and you're right on, unless the offensive wrestler has control and restrains the opponent in a pinning situation for 2 seconds.
So it starts after 2 seconds.
No, he has the restraining there. If I'm in there and I'm trying to switch and I'm doing it for 7 seconds, there's no count. And I'll tell you what, if you polled every wrestling coach in the state of Iowa, I bet 95% of them would get that wrong. And I would have when I was coaching. And I coached for nearly 4 decades. KJ, good job, man.
Hot damn, the sun shines on dogs behind.
You know, that explains my D- in school then, doesn't it?
So, now that being said, I hope that if there's any officials watching this or coaches watching this, the officials will understand that you don't do your count right away, and the coaches, did I say that right? The officials don't do your count right away, and the coaches don't get on the officials because that's the rule. You're misinterpreting. You don't understand the rule, and I didn't either as a coach. I'm going count 1, 2, and I was wrong. So make sure you're realizing that and don't get on them too hard.
You know, we might have to do this every week.
I know. So I have to get a hold of Roth to give me some more.
Yeah,
Feed us.
that's
Now,
a good
that
one.
being said, I'd like
that
to
one.
lead into this one as well because with the shorties that we've spoken of before and officials, here's what I'd like to see you do. If you're interested, high school coaches and high school seniors, identify some people that would be interested in making some money, doing something they love, helping the sport of wrestling. So if you're interested at all in becoming an official at the next wrestling meet, go up to an official and ask them, what's it about? What kind of money can I make? What time do I have to do? How do I become an official? It's an open book test, that sort of thing. So get your information from that official. I know they'd be happy to help you get started. Please do it.
It's interesting since we're on that topic here to start out with. Jeff Linder had kind of an interesting proposition when we were discussing some of this. I wrote something at the beginning of football season about kind of the struggle with officials and the numbers that they have and the retention that they have and everything. And one of the things, and it was mainly geared towards basketball, but still I think applies. He said part of the coaching certification should be a mandatory stint officiating to see their side of it as well. So, because coaches think they know a lot of the rules, and when it turns out there are some intricacies that not even they know, and of course they want to argue about and stuff, but that would be kind of a neat deal. And for younger assistants that are coming up, spend a season and officiate, you might actually think, you know what, I'd rather do this instead of coach.
I know some that have.
So, and one thing too, and I think this kind of goes along with what you were saying, if you have wrestlers that aren't going to go to the next level and compete, plant that seed. Great way to stick around the sport. Hey, you know what? If you're not going to wrestle when you go to, Dubuque or Co. or Wartburg or Upper Iowa or Buena Vista or Grandview or wherever you go, Mount Mercy or Kirkwood, think about doing this and giving back to the sport that way.
I know a few that have done it even when they're wrestling. I don't know how I ever could, but
that'd be a
some
great
of them
way.
do. Like on Sunday or whatever, cut your teeth,
Great way of spending money, I guess.
Yeah.
While you're in college.
Yep.
Yeah. So I like the little segment. You gonna try to bring some more.
You
might
have to
do that. We'll do that.
Yeah, you might have to patent that.
So we'll take
So
we'll take it week by week. It depends on how many more I get right.
And I probably should. Yeah, I probably should. I was exaggerating. If I'm there for 7 seconds, and you probably, I was kind of exaggerating, but by then you've probably held me there. So that's when it has to be a judgment. As to now is the top man controlling him and holding him there. So but it's not right away. It's not break the plane, boom, boom, boom.
Is he holding, or is it still part of the reaction?
So anyway, we'll have some fun with that.
Yeah, awesome. So let's jump into some of the action from this last weekend. Last one for kind of the last big one before the holiday break. Not much on the college level. You went out to Vegas and saw the Desert Duels. Luther went to the Gator Boots event in is it Nashville?
Yes.
Nashville. Okay. But we'll open with the. It's not really a college event, but a lot of college competitors were there. The U.S. Senior Nationals down in Fort Worth, Texas, and the big one, Spencer Lee. This was something at the beginning of the season. We knew Spencer Lee was going to split his time between competing in freestyle and try to gear up for a run to the 2020 Olympics. And this just seemed to work out as an opportunity for the Olympic to qualify for the Olympic trials. And boy, he took advantage of that opportunity.
Can you tell me some of the competitors that were in that weight class? Well, 57, right?
Yes, Nathan Tomasello, the former Ohio State wrestler, Vito, I'll butcher his name, from Cornell University, Darian Cruz, I believe a national champ for Lehigh, or at least a national finalist.
Yeah, Lehigh.
For Lehigh was in that group as well. Nick Soriano of Rutgers that was in there as well. Zach Sanders from Minnesota was up there. Deshaun Garrett from Cornell as well was there. So that bracket had some pretty familiar names. Now,
some big names.
It was a competitive field, and I guess what I look at is somebody like Spencer, because it is different than folk style, and some kids.
Not according to him, right?
No, but I guess what I was getting at, some guys are better at freestyle than folk style, or vice versa, and so that's what I was kind of looking at to see how Spencer would do, and I guess he answered that question.
Well, and I was asking that so that we kind of set the table for how good of a weekend he had.
Yeah.
I mean, man, oh man.
A couple other names that'll be that are familiar: Alan Waters, who wrestled at Missouri.
Missouri.
Frank Pirelli, not necessarily most known for what he did in college, but he's a very accomplished wrestler in freestyle as well. So, yeah, and we were going over the numbers. I'm kind of blanking here a little bit, but I think it was something to the effect of outscoring opponents 44-6 or
I thought it
or
was
52 to 6.
52 to
I think
6.
you said, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean it was a dominant performance.
With those wrestlers, that is incredible. I mean, man, and to step off the mat, it's not like we haven't seen that before. Kyle Snyder a couple of years ago, throughout the season, went and won Olympic gold.
Yeah.
So it's not unheard of, but it's pretty rare. And in that quality of company there, wow.
Yeah, considering and interestingly, Lee and Zahid Valencia, two guys that elected not to take Olympic red shirts this year, and to compete at the D1 level, both won titles. Saturday you had Logan Massa, who I believe took his Olympic red shirt to compete. So that's kind of a different category altogether. But yeah, he teched his way up into the finals where he beat Tomasello 8-2, who I'm sure still is having nightmares with anybody from with a Tiger Hawk relationship. But
being I think there's an advantage and a disadvantage to being on a college team. So that kind of goes both ways. The disadvantage is you don't get to focus 100% on international freestyle wrestling or Greco, whichever you're choosing to do. In this case, freestyle. But the advantage might be maybe, and I know it's less important in freestyle or international wrestling because you do have a break. But you're in better condition, I think, because you're working out with the team. You're constantly pushing it hard and for each week for competition. So I think that there's an advantage to that. I'm guessing Spencer Lee didn't look too tired. I've really not seen him ever look too tired, but maybe a couple times last year, throughout the year. But
one of the things too that he looks so natural and comfortable wrestling freestyle. I mean, it's not like he looks uncomfortable wrestling. I mean, he's great in folk style, obviously, and we've seen what he's done. But he just looks that much better as a free. I mean, I think that's what he loves. More than anything. I know he just loves wrestling in general, but I think freestyle is what he just naturally loves, and it showed. There was an exchange. I saw the video of him and Vito going, and it looked like he was going to be giving up points, and then next thing you know, he's coming out on top, and he's getting exposure, and he might have finished the match off.
I think I saw that
right there.
Yeah, that was nice.
Which was so pretty.
And I think when what you're talking about, he's comfortable no matter what situation he's in. Like you said, to come out of that and score his points or tech fall or whatever. Yeah. I think it's comfortable.
And isn't it fun to root for a guy like that? I mean, it's just
exactly
down to earth and all just a good guy, So
yep, and seeing I believe it was Christian Piles from Flow Wrestling whose son went up to him and gave him a Pokemon journal. You've heard all the stories about how much he likes
his son. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
So
I did see that.
Went up there, gave him a Pokemon journal. Of course, Spencer received it graciously and took a picture with him, and that's the part that gets overlooked so much with Spencer Lee.
I saw
with
that,
his success,
and I thought to myself, I bet Spencer Lee's not going to set that in a pile of books or whatever like I would do or something. He's going to have that up on in his desk or something, or his bulletin board or whatever. And, because it just seems like that's the kind of guy he is. So
yeah,
good job, Spencer.
He's a great ambassador of the sport. And, we've seen a few of them, and he's a great ambassador. And now on to the Olympic trials. That's I mean, there's still maybe there'll be some more competition between now and April, but
Well,
you know.
he does have a high hill to climb. As do I mean, when you reduce from 10 to 6 weight classes, and we'll talk a little bit about that right now. So let's get started, I guess. With at 57, he'll have Gilman, and then he'll also have Dayton Fix.
Fix.
So right there, stop. Those two are pretty darn solid. Then throw in Seth Gross as well. So and the kids that he just wrestled that qualified. So
and possibly depending on what Joe Cologne and Graff do as well.
And Garrett, I don't know that Garrett can go down, but we'll see.
Well, he wrestled there this last weekend, so.
Oh, that's right. He was there. Yeah.
Yep. So, that's a possibility,
Right.
and that could be a real awesome weight class. Just touch on some of the other qualifiers, Olympic trial qualifiers from Iowa and men's freestyle here with Iowa Connections that wrestled this weekend. Sam Brooks was fifth. I believe at 86 kilograms.
Correct.
So that's about 174. So,
Yeah,
bad at
somewhere in there.
math. So I'm not sure. Kyvan Gadsden of Iowa State and Waterloo East. He was fourth at 97, which I do know is like 213 and a half. So I do know that.
I don't know.
So
It's about 1.8.
and not to mention, I've been known to make stuff up anyway. So, you guys mentioned Don Bradley, who is national champ and won 25 this weekend, beating Anthony Nelson in the finals. He was a former Iowa State coach
And
as well.
Did he help coach their Olympic Training Center?
I think he did.
Regional,
Okay.
regional
Yeah.
training center also.
Okay.
Yep. I know he was
Part of
it,
Iowa State.
And then Jordan Oliver. You mentioned we watched him in the Dream Team at Iowa City West.
Well, wasn't
one
it?
year?
No,
That's where he beat McDonough.
Right. Yeah. And the fascinating part about Jordan was the following year the Dream Team was down in Oklahoma, and he was one of the first kids that. When we went down to the wrestling room in Oklahoma State's wrestling room, he was the first kid to come up and say hi to me.
That's
Yeah. You talk about Spencer being a great individual. Jordan was too.
And he had a heck of a weekend.
Holy moly, did he?
Winning his weight class, what did he outscore?
50-0. 50-0. Name some names in his weight class.
Nick Lee, Yanni Diaz.
He beat
Yanni D.
he beat Joseph McKenna,
McKenna.
10-0 in the
Jordan
finals. McKenna was the one who beat Yanni Diakomahalis. Oliver also beat Nick Lee of Penn State, 10-0. Looking here, who else did he defeat? Bryce Meredith
Oh yeah.
from Wyoming.
National
So
champ.
he's blanking some very notable competitors. Sean Foss, was he at Edinburgh and then transferred to Minnesota, I think, or no, the North Carolina State. I'm thinking of Sean Russell. Sean Foss was a North Carolina State wrestler. So, very notable names, and he just rolled right through it to win Outstanding
Right.
Wrestler.
And so now move on to the next level. So this is a senior open. Then they have the trials, and then I think they have something after the trials too. I'm not. To me, it's like an onion. You just have to
You
peel
keep
off the
the
layers
layers.
until you get to the. It's sometimes difficult to follow, but at his weight class, Zane Rutherford. So that right there, those two right there, and then I think probably the rest. Logan Stieber is also there, but I think Logan is actually retired.
Tired,
Yeah.
kind of
Announced his
done.
retirement.
So we'll see if there's maybe a comeback. And it'll be interesting to see where James Green fits in.
Well,
I don't
yeah.
know if he could make it down to 65,
Yeah.
but that might be tough. But that you never know.
And he almost has to, because
Well, 'cause
if he
with Burrows
doesn't,
and
he's
those-
going to move up to 74, where you have Jordan Burroughs, arguably one of the top three, if not better, the greatest of all time international wrestlers for the United States. So,
Yep.
so you got Burroughs, and then kick in that was announced, I think in September, at least by Coach Cole from Cornell. that Dake is coming down to 74. So you
Oh,
put
that's
in-
a fair, that he,
well, I
okay.
saw that.
Okay.
Back in. It's been a while. I haven't seen that confirmed, but we'll still wait and see
But
where.
with
Kyle
those 6
Dake
weight
goes.
classes anymore, it's basically a 20-pound difference between weights.
So you've got 3 world champs, right? Was Green's a world champ?
And that 20 pounds at
he
that
was,
level makes it tough.
he's
to
a
I
knock
know he's
out.
been a medalist.
Remember if
Has
he
he
won
been a
it?
world? I can't remember if James Green is.
So you got Dake, 2-time, and then you got Burles, and then Green. I thought was a world champ. Could be wrong on that one. Certainly a multi-time medalist though.
Yeah.
And then so if they all go to 74, wow, holy cow!
Yeah, and we were talking about this beforehand with Dake being a world champion at a non-Olympic weight class. He earns a bid to the semifinals at whatever weight he decides to go.
Yeah.
So, you even look at you've got David Carr in there, Isaiah Martinez at 74 as well.
Which
there's some really
pretty darn good wrestlers, but I don't know that
fireworks.
they're to that level
No,
yet.
no,
Right.
Yeah,
not at all.
which is it's very sad actually that we have to pare down to 6 weight classes from 10 for the Olympics, and I know we should be going. We're lucky to have wrestling because of the battle that we had to keep it a number of years ago, and we're still in that battle. So we've got to maintain that and keep promoting it, and hopefully get to 10 weight classes, back to 10 weight classes at each. So 30 total.
Yeah.
So it goes from 30 with the Greco men's and women's off Olympic year world championships to 18. So you go from 30
You
to
almost cut it in half, which
Yeah.
doesn't quite fall in line with the all-inclusive theme that the Olympics tried to tell wrestling they wanted to see from them and
Right.
begin with. So wrestling said, "You're right. We got to make changes. We'll do it." And they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna not let all of you in."
right.
So it
And-
seemed like the Olympics talking out of both sides of their mouth there.
And it's a crying shame because the United States is as good maybe as it's ever been, and as deep as it's ever been. So I mean we're putting 10 quality people out there in a world championship, and now down to 6. So,
Yeah, now they gotta cannibalize
Fight,
each other
yeah.
just to
right.
represent the country. Speaking of women's freestyle,
Oh,
just
before we
go ahead.
since we're on this theme, and before we go to the women's, let's jump at one more level. Between 86 and 97, you've got what we talked. Zahid was the champ there, but I'm not sure Zahid's up to the level yet of the others in that class. You got David Taylor, Pat Downey, who's an Iowa State connection, of course,
Right.
and Iowa, I guess, to some extent, and then Alex Derringer. And I
Right.
mean, holy cow, those guys are great. Now, the in between weight class, Jaden Cox, Bo Nichols.
That's
Where do
right.
they go? Both world champs. Bo Nickel 23 and under, and then Jaden two-time or at least 2-time world champ, and maybe the best wrestler in America right now.
Right.
So where do they go? Do they jump up and wrestle Snyder? With Kyle Snyder, they drop down, wrestle with David Taylor. So I mean, holy cow! It's
a
it's
log-
exciting
log
because
jam.
you get to see some great wrestling, but it's disappointing because there's great wrestlers
Because
that
they
are going to
can't
stay at home.
qualify.
And
Yeah.
So anyway, there we go now to the women's in Forrest.
And yeah, and you mentioned it. She's really, I think, really taken a lot of people by storm. Member of the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, Forrest Molinari, comes away with a title. Had already qualified for the Olympic trials at a different weight class. Was it 60?
65,
Well,
I
she
believe.
qualified at a non-Olympic weight class, which that allowed her to,
Right.
we think, to move into a weight class and then, but not to the semifinals. Is that
Right.
okay?
And she just decided she wrestles 68 kilograms and comes away with a title down there as well. What'd you think of the cowboy hats that they gave out?
I like those.
I thought it was kind of neat too, and we saw Spencer and Forrest both donning that.
So it was held in Texas. If we didn't
Yeah.
put it together.
So she actually won by fall in the final, I believe.
Minute 8.
pinned Victoria Francis in just a little over a minute there, and was really dominant. And it's I mean, she's just as impressive. That Hawkeye Wrestling Club group that they have down there, especially with her and Allie Reagan, who is qualified for the Olympic trials as well. I think she's also in that limbo of where
In between.
in between weight classes.
She's in between 57 and 62. Yep.
You know, and
Yeah, because Francis dropped down to that weight. So one moved up, one moved down. So
Yep. And the one that moved up.
both world team members. So
and we've talked about a lot here about the growth, and we've seen the numbers, the boon of participation at, in girls wrestling. How great is it to have, we've had some really good role models, thinking of Megan Black, Felicity Taylor, Rachel Waters, even Jasmine Bailey, Cassie Herkelman, and many of the girls that competed last year and everything. But how great is it to have somebody like this right in Iowa City training? I believe she has been kind of been a part of some clinics and stuff like that, to go out and do as well as herself and Allie Reagan have done.
Well, you'll hear the Iowa coaches tell you how important it is to have those world level wrestlers in the area training in their room and that sort of thing. So it doesn't matter female, male. I mean, they're all focused and they're all doing what it takes and
Yep.
I'm guessing Terry Brands is such a strong freestyle influence. So Mark Perry's is he the Hawkeye Club?
Yeah.
Coach, yeah. He's still, yeah.
And
Sorry, Mark.
I believe it was Terry, Perry, and Telford that went down to Fort Worth with the wrestlers from the Hawkeye Wrestling Club and everything. And they wrestled well. I understand Corey Clark got hurt. Hopefully, he recovers quickly and stuff. But a lot of people kind of forget how instrumental Mike DeRoe was.
Right.
On the women's scene, I remember he even was he filled in as Guam's women's coach, I think in 2008 in China, and so that's kind of continuing with what they're doing.
And the U.S. women's coach is
Yes.
Terry Steiner.
Yep.
Right. So another Iowa national champ.
So good connections there
Absolutely.
as well. Congratulations to those guys down there. And one other thing too, on the Greco side, I believe Caleb Reeves competed.
Oh,
I don't
that's
think
right.
I don't think he placed. I'm not exactly sure how he did, but
I think he went 1 and 2.
One and two?
Yeah.
you know,
I hope I ran
sophomore
that.
at Co, who just moved into the rankings right before break at number 10, I believe. But that's something. No, as a prep, he had success in Greco. Probably a little more success in Greco than he did folk style. And then him going to Co, and I've seen pictures of him in Ostendorf blocking up every once in a while in practice. I mean, that had to have been just kind of a perfect marriage and choice for him to go down there and work with. Who, as many people know, had a good career in Greco.
Yeah.
So
Now, who does he wrestle for? What club is he with?
Probably the Kohawk Club. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not sure on that.
I guess the reason I was asking, I was trying to look it up and I couldn't find it. That's why I'm asking.
I didn't. I know.
So and there's there's a little there's some intricacies there with like who they can represent while they're there as well, because I think that's one of the reasons why Spencer Lee is not listed as a Hawkeye Wrestling Club member, because he's actually a member of the Iowa wrestling team and can't be down there. I don't think he can be down there on behalf of the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. But I'm not sure there.
with the rules. And
Yeah, with
such
the
are.
regulations and stuff. Knowing the NCAA, there's probably some convoluted formula keeping athletes from doing that. But so there was some D3 representation. I think Eric Toohey, was he a former Wisconsin lacrosse wrestler?
I'm not sure.
Eric Toohey.
I don't know
I
that
saw
either.
his name placing at in the Greco side. I'll see if I can find it here really quick. He's listed with the Minnesota Storm Wrestling Club, but for some reason, I thought Eric Toohey might have been one of Dave Malichek's former wrestlers at Wisconsin Lacrosse, but with the D3. It's neat to see some D3 like Donnie Logendijk, maybe former former Augsburg heavyweight,
Augsburg, yeah, definitely right.
as
Yep.
well. So some D3 representation down there is nice to see. And speaking of D3, D2, D3, there's some
Well, let me tell you about it.
representation out at Vegas.
I just got off the plane, by the way.
No, seriously, he really just got off the plane a little bit ago.
And got up at 2:30 a.m. I guess. Anyway, so the Desert Duels. It's held at the Flamingo in their big ballroom. There's 3 ballrooms there that they open up and put 6 wrestling mats in. It's a pretty neat setting, really. And it's basically they give each team 3 dual meets. There might be an exception here or there that we get a 4th or whatever, but there was 21 teams represented by 17 schools. So like Wartburg had 3 different teams. Lacrosse had 2 teams. There was another team that had 2 teams as well. And then so they did 7 rounds of duels on 6 mats. And so it's 38 total duels. It started at 8 a.m. and ended about 6:30 p.m. So it was a big day, a long day, but it was good wrestling. And the quality of wrestling was really, I thought this year was as good as it's ever been in the last 4 years that I've been going. So Upper Iowa was one of the teams there, and Upper Iowa did get four duels in there, that exception. To try and get everyone in the 3rd duel, they must have been the team that stepped up, and I'm sure probably Wartburg hosts it, so probably Coach Keller contacted Upper Iowa and asked them if they'd be interested in that. Of course, I'm going to guess they're jumping at the chance for that. Anyway, they wrestled Simon Fraser, which I believe is out of Canada, right?
Yes.
Is that right?
British Columbia.
And they beat Simon Fraser 33-7. They wrestled North Carolina Pembroke, beat them 26-12. They beat Cloud County Community College 48-0, and then Embry Riddle 34-10. I almost said Riddler. This is my Batman. Anyway, number 1 ranked Nick Baumler and Tristan Westerland both went 3-0, and that's that opportunity. You don't just take 10 wrestlers. You take, like Wartburg had 41 wrestlers competing. Lacrosse had a big bunch as well, and Upper Iowa, and so they can interchange when they need to, and so I'm sure that's what happened there. So Wartburg, number 1 ranked Wartburg. By the way, Upper Iowa's ranked 6th in D2. Number 1 ranked Wartburg won 24 or 30 of their matches on their number 1 team. They beat Trine University 44-4. They beat number 10 ranked North Central 24-9, and they had 2. That's in this duel. They had 2 weights where they had ranked wrestlers wrestling each other. Chris Rump, ranked number 3, beat the number 8 ranked wrestler from North Central, and Kyle Briggs, ranked number 1 at 84, beat the number 7 ranked wrestler. And then Wartburg then wrestled Northern State, which is a good D2 team. They wrestled a good meet against St. Cloud State, who's the number 1 ranked team. And St. Cloud State is a good team. I've seen them. And the score doesn't indicate that it was close, but if you look at the match scores, they were all like 1 and 2 and 3-point matches. So a good team, Northern State team, and really Wartburg stepped it up and wrestled really well in that meet and beat them 31-6. Kyle Briggs and Isaiah Cox both went 3-0 on the other day, and they had 4 others that went 2-0.
Northern State's in the same conference as Upper Iowa, correct?
I believe they're that North Sun, is it?
Yep.
Yeah, that.
North Sun.
But D2 school is what I was getting at.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's D2 and D3
Right.
and some community junior colleges, so
Right.
no D1s, but there was one there 2 years ago. that was going to be D1 the next year, Lenny Zaleski's team at Cal Baptist.
Oh, sure.
So they were a very good team there. Anyway, then the Gator Boot duels. I was told how that got its name. Do you know how it got its name?
I do not.
It's a little trivia here, right? So evidently this used to be held down in Florida where it was the Gator duels or whatever, the Gator tournament that they called it. Well, then they, and Luther hosts this, so then they decided to move it to Tennessee. Well, there's no Gators in Tennessee, so they had to get something that kind of associated it with Tennessee, so they still call it the
Boots?
Gator Boots duels. So that's how that got its name, huh?
Cowboy boots.
I like that. Was pretty clever.
Yeah.
There's 14 teams there, and they wrestled 25 duels. Luther was one of them, and Simpson was there. Luther went 3-0 there. Of course, Luther hosted it. They wrestled Penn College and beat them 45-3. Delaware Valley, they won 40-6, and Huntingdon 45-5. Simpson went 1-3, so they got 4 meets in. Delaware Valley, they lost 27-25 on a real close one. Manchester College 32-12. Milliken, who we know very well, very a ranked D2 team that's in the lower Midwest Regional. Milliken won 34-12, and then the University of Ozarks, which is also a D2 team, Simpson won 25-17. So good weekend of wrestling for the
Good win, and
2s and 3s.
Dylan Peters,
Simpson, yeah.
Yeah.
The new coach at Simpson.
taking over. So, yeah.
And
it was
University
fun.
of Ozarks, aren't they also in that lower Midwest
Yes,
regional?
also in that, in their
And
coach.
who's the, yeah,
I can remember his name, but he's a former Wartburg
Wartburg.
national champion.
Right.
Leroy Gardner.
Leroy
Yes.
Gardner, thank you. Yeah, there we go.
He
Sorry,
was,
Leroy.
he was a tough.
Yeah, and that's a nice
fella.
guy. I've spoken with him. He's
Yes.
very,
Oh yeah.
very nice. So
Did he have a bow tie? That's what I want to know, because I think I've seen him sport a bow tie before, which you wouldn't really associate with somebody that was as tough and could
Physical.
be intimidating as Leroy was when he wrestled.
maybe that made him more intimidating wearing a bow tie.
Hey, if you can wear whatever you want.
Yep.
when you,
and I've noticed in the last 3 years that I've been watching that his program is
Slowly
improving, yeah.
making climbs.
And that's a tough area to climb in, that lower Midwest regional. It's-
Yeah, because they
it's
come all the
tough.
way up here for
Right.
that, don't they?
Right.
Right, and there's 17 teams in that, and they're 17 pretty decent ones. So
Yeah.
that art conference.
So, we got the Midlands coming up. I don't actually have an entry list. I know Iowa plans to be there. Talking to Tom Brands last week, this will be a big kind of a factor when it comes to things like 184, deciding 184. He said there are a few weights that are going to be like that. 141, even though maybe Max is kind of the front runner. He's like, it's not, set in stone yet. He said Carter Apple's going to have something to say about it. You've got some
Okay.
other guys in the field there. I'm doing a little something on Abe Assad, who is a freshman from Glenbard North.
Oh, yeah,
That's
good
right in
program,
their
Chicago.
backyard. So he's going back home. But you've seen Midlands be kind of a proving ground for freshmen, especially when the Hawkeyes have gone. When you've seen what Derek St. John did, placing, in his redshirt year, and of course, fans at the time were clamoring for him to come out of redshirt. Didn't, and then became a 4-time All-American. Same thing with Brandon Sorensen, placing there as a red shirt. People wanted to see him shed his red shirt, and, he continued to work that first year, and then was a 4-time All-American as well. Kemmerer was in that same boat. Marinelli a little bit as well. We saw what Cassiope did last year. I think he opened some eyes, and, it was fun to watch him for the
Finished
first time. I can't remember if he was
I think
third or
it's third.
fourth.
Okay,
Yeah, I can't remember either.
But yeah, I know he
Correct.
did place. It might have been a little bit lower, but
okay.
but he did place. I think Marinelli finished like around 5th or 6th. But it was interesting because I asked Abe Assad if he had gone to the did you go and watch? And he said he went last year to watch, which is he kind of assumed so since he was being recruited and
Right.
committed. But he said one of the other times when he was little, his dad took him there, and he watched Brent Metcalf win a title. And then he said, "You know what?" He goes, "I actually think he signed a hat for me." You know, he was there. He got a hat signed. And he goes, then he's like, "I think Tom and Terry signed it too." So he still has a hat that from about 10 years ago, probably. So he was 8, 9 years old, right around there. And he's got that hat, and now he gets to go back, and he's excited to be able to.
Your story kind of reminded me of the Midlands of yesteryear, when you could have, and that's not going to happen, especially with the senior nationals just getting over. But when you have, it was an open tournament, and you would have Olympic, especially on Olympic year, you'd have Olympic athletes that would enter the tournament, and you'd have high school. That's what made me think of it when he was there watching last year in high school.
Yeah.
So you'd have high school guys competing. Like I remember Carr, was it Nate or one of the Cars early on wrestled there when he was in high school.
Really?
Jimmy Carr. Was it Jimmy? Yeah, and it did well on it too. So anyway, so those days are gone. But it's just, and I think that's the good thing.
Really?
I think the Olympic level needs to be doing their thing. I like that.
Oh, really?
And so
Because you
like
won't
to
see
see
like Joe Williams, who has 10 Midlands titles. You won't ever see that. Nobody will ever come close to that because of that.
Just the way that our international development has built its schedule. So
Right.
Yeah, because I'd like to see them elite high school even come in and.
that'd be kind of neat.
Yeah.
The high school, but I think they'll.
I mean, you would only have about maybe 1 or 2 a year, but it's still interesting to watch those.
There's so
guys.
many elite high school tournaments right now around the country. There was one in California this past weekend, and when I was in Vegas, there was a Battle of Vegas as well. So they kind of have their own little niche as well. Iowa can't go to those because there's the rules of travel distance. But
Yeah, there are times where I think the Hawkeye Wrestling Club sent a team over there and actually won the team race and stuff with postgraduates. One thing I've always liked
beat
too.
their Iowa team, if I remember right. Yeah.
Always liked seeing, and I haven't seen it maybe as much, but seeing other division wrestlers compete in it as well. I know we've had, John Helgerson is one of them that I think placed for Wartburg there. We've seen individuals from Cornell, Alex Coolidge compete there as well previously.
A couple of years ago, you saw Riley Lefevre, right?
Yep, from Wabash.
Full-timer from Wabash.
And I think he might be in the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club now too. So
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, so Grandview's had some guys go over there. Place as well. So that's kind of neat. So the
Upper
Midlands
Iowa
is still.
sent some.
Yep. Yeah. So and of course, remember last year Tanner Sloan is a red shirt with Clayton Rush in his corner because they couldn't have South Dakota State coaches with him since he was redshirting. So kind of neat, and it'll be interesting. Reminder too, UNI is there, not to overlook what.
I was just going to say, because remember, I think didn't Joe Cologne win that, or did he?
He won it one year against Ramos in the finals.
Right.
Lujan I think made the finals last year. I remember Bryce Steyer wrestled well. I can't remember how he finished. Max Thompson might have finished second to the Princeton kid. I'm missing his name here. They've had some battles the last year.
But he made the finals too.
But I think he made the finals. That might have been a semi. Albert won it.
Oh, Josh.
Josh Albert won it as well. So look forward to a good showing of Michael Blockus. I think that was maybe Blockus' real big kind of coming out performance last year.
Yes,
I agree. Yeah.
So
and you might see some guys that are behind some of those guys that are competing as well. Bennett and
Biscaglia.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, him too. So take a look at that. That'll start Sunday the 29th. And then finish up on Monday the 30th. There at the Sears Center arena in Hoffman Estates now that they've moved it out to the western suburbs.
I think we mentioned this the other day. One of the local Cornell, I think Cornell is going to the Sunshine. Is it still called Sunshine Duels?
Invitational or
or whatever down in Florida. Most of them are going to not compete until the national duels of the D3 and I think Upper Iowa D2. So they're kind of off until the 10th.
Have a little bit of a break, and then Iowa State will have the Southern Scuffle
Right.
after the first of the year. So it'll be interesting to see.
That runs like second or third or something, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 2nd and 3rd of January.
So
All right. Well, let's transition to. I know we're running pretty long, but let's transition to the preps. One last big weekend before the break. Of course, everything kind of starts and ends in Waterloo with the Battle of Waterloo, and everything that was expected pretty much played out with the competition there and some awesome championship pool duels.
Right. The four. Well, first of all, it's kind of general because you're talking. It's a dual tournament, not an individual tournament. So you're talking as a team, and when you look at a team, some did well, some did not so well on one duel, and then the next duel, some did not so well. So, but
yeah, but it all comes down to matchups. Most of those
Exactly.
duels were basically decided on a match.
Yep. Right.
Pretty much that whole championship pool.
In that pool, right? Yeah, for sure. So your winners were
The championship winner. Well, obviously the
Lisbon.
top four.
Yeah. Lisbon was a winner.
Yep.
Don Bosco, and then West Delaware with the show.
Yeah. So those four won the bracket like we thought they would, and then Lisbon went 2-1 with wins over West Delaware and Don Bosco in the final duel.
So to your point about matchups, here's the number 1 team, Lisbon, who lost to the number 4 team.
Exactly.
Because of matchups, So and then they beat Lisbon beat 2 and 3, very close matches. 30, I think one was 2 points maybe. Let's see, 34-32 over Don Bosco, and I guess it was 10 points over West Delaware.
But that came down to the last match as well.
Well,
It was a
exactly.
4-point. It was
Right, yeah.
34-30 going into that last one. And I think if West Delaware would have gotten a major, they would have won on criteria, but I'm not exactly sure. But it doesn't matter because I believe Hawk of Lisbon finished it off with a fall, and they were down 24-0 to West Delaware to start that duel.
Wow.
So they climbed out of that, got some big wins along the way. Cole Clark kind of got things going for them, and then once they kind of got
Right
to the
in there.
lower weights,
Yeah.
they really started.
There was five number 1 ranked kids in that duel.
Was there really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
3 for Lisbon, 2 for West Delaware.
Yeah.
So that's that tells you a little bit, and then of course the Waverly Shell Rock Don Bosco duel in the first round of that was the duel decided by that overtime match between Frost and
And
Jan.
Yant.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, come down to that last. Now, couldn't
take
you
down-
imagine the crowd on that thing?
What a duck hunter! I saw that. Holy
Yeah.
cow! Jeez, that was beautiful.
And
The crowd was
Yeah.
the crowd was going nuts. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
And basically the tournament champion was decided on that match.
Yeah,
If
kind
you
of,
want-
yeah. Yeah, because if that goes the other
Yeah.
way,
Right. And you had
We're
your
looking
third
at
and
something
fourth ranked
different.
kids going at it besides.
Yeah.
Yep. So, it's so cool when you expect something so big out of the competition, and they deliver.
And it
Yeah.
fulfills it.
Yeah, and that's like you said, just everything kind of came down to it, and if you look at the other duels too, once you get outside of that, the second pool, North Scott, Linn-Mar, Prairie, and West Des Moines Valley finished. Essentially it would be 5th through 8th, right?
Right.
But you had Linn-Mar and Prairie wrestling. They'd gone into criteria previously that Linn-Mar had won after tying 39-39. They have another battle, and Prairie comes out on top 39-36. Then you have West Des Moines Valley, who beat Prairie 39-33. So that's coming down to essentially the last match as well. North Scott wrestled really, really well throughout that, but not just that.
So basically, West Des Moines Valley beats Prairie. West Des Moines Valley finishes fourth in this pool. Prairie finishes third. Again, that's that round robin. It's so
Yep.
close. Really, North Scott was kind of handled this pool, and then the other three, I think, is how it kind of fell there. But
Yep. And that was
based on
kind of
scores.
interesting too with North Scott. They were a 3 seed coming out of their bracket, and they're one of the 3 seeds that.
I was
away
kind of
with
looking
wins.
at. That's the one that I thought might have been able to jump it. When you asked if we could jump, if anyone could beat the ones, I didn't really think that, but the
Right.
2, that was the one I was thinking might
Yep.
happen.
And Valley did that as well with Indianola, who won the.
And if I'm not
Pool three.
mistaken, I think didn't Matthias wrestle for North Scott this week? Because he's been off. He's been he's been
I can
Hurt.
look that up here really quick.
because I know he's been kind of been hurting a little bit.
So see here.
That this is just a quality tournament all the way through. In the pool 3, Indianola was first in that, Ankeny second, Cedar Falls third, and Osage fourth. I mean, lots of history in those 4 programs for sure.
Yeah, I saw that he took the mat a couple times. I don't think
Yeah.
he wrestled a full weekend, but
Yeah, because he's just coming back, so that'll help North Scott out
right. And
with him back in the lineup.
and was he your number 1?
I'm thinking he was. That's
Okay,
why.
because that was a battle with him and Tate Noctcaborn of Linmar, who swept his competition and stayed unbeaten. So a freshman with another big win.
We got to see him wrestle Thursday. He's very
That
good.
real deal.
Oh boy, he's good. Yeah,
Yep.
It's gonna be fun watching him these next 4 years.
And we're pretty impressed. Not to change gears here, but just to kind of shift a little bit. We saw Linmar and Iowa City West wrestle some matchups between ranked wrestlers, and Linmar was impressive as a dual team. I thought, got a big win from Ryan Plummer, who was right there. Like I think a battle between 3 and 4 with Ashton Barker of Iowa City West. And who was the other matchup between ranked wrestlers that Linmar won that I'm
Jeez.
blanking on?
I'm about 80 meets away.
I know.
Yeah,
I
right.
am too.
That's something.
But Linmar's actually, to me, is a better dual team than I was thinking of at the beginning of the year. I thought they had more stars and deeper holes, but they're a halfway decent, or pretty decent dual team.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty balanced.
Yeah.
The other one was Brandon O'Brien over
Oh
Grant
yeah,
Odell.
sure. Hello.
Odell.
That's one to really see O'Brien's progress. Beat him 6-1. One of them was the point he gave up was a penalty point for an illegal hold, but it was 3 takedowns to 0,
None.
and he rode tough, and he
Right.
really was in control. Come to find out that he beat Odell in freestyle and Greco over the summer. Even though Odell was the one that beat him in the
State
blood
tournament,
round
yeah.
at state to make the podium. So we've seen the progress that O'Brien's made, and Linmar's looked good.
Yeah.
The
so
growth
far.
he's made.
Yeah, yeah,
In two,
Literally.
both.
Literally.
In 2 yeah.
yep. So did you like how I put that? Okay.
Yeah.
So on the mat and physically, he's grown finally into a 106 pounder and everything. Some other tournaments. I happened to go to North Lynn. I elected to go to an invitational tournament because some of those area teams I don't get to see very often. So it was nice to go see some of the ranked wrestlers that were there. Really, really impressed with some of the individuals. Dyersville Beckman came away with a team title. That's not necessarily a school that's had a lot of team success. A couple years ago with Taylor Hotek as head coach, who's now at Iowa City High as an assistant, I think they won a sectional title. But outside of that, they really haven't had a lot of success. They have a good team.
I think this is the fruits of their labor. I've seen a lot of their kids in the youth level coming
Really?
through, and so I'm thinking it's that's partly it has to be a lot of it actually.
Well, that's what they say. The key to the program is
Absolutely.
that feeder, that kids club to teach them, get them involved, get them to love the sport.
Right.
What fascinated me about that tournament, did Beckman only have one champion?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I guess and to be team champion, they had to have depth.
Yeah.
Lots of
Yep, and they were missing some guys. They had Wolf Cooley wasn't out like the 82 pounder that won at Mount Vernon. He wasn't in the lineup, so they only had 10 guys, or maybe I think they only had like 11 guys or so. They had 3 finalists, like
Right.
5 in the top 3.
5
6
in the top 4. Yeah, 5
Yeah.
or something like that.
But that whole tournament was the Beckman won it with 161. CPU was 8th with 110, so it's not a big separation.
Right, and
Very spread
CPU in Wapello had the most individual champs.
I was just going to say,
Buffalo
well,
had 3.
Yeah, CPU had 3 as
3
well.
also? Okay.
Whitehead at 113, Colin Haskins at 60, and then the big one that I thought was Keegan Sheeler at 138, who beat Heath Moyer from Northland, a former state medalist. I think he's ranked 6th maybe this in the last edition of the rankings. Came through a big third period, really pulled away, and was really impressive, I thought, in that victory. And one other thing that I noticed too, and it's not really going to come through on a lot of radars just because in the grand scheme of things it's not that big, but Cedar Rapids, Washington had 3 finalists and
I had
2
them on my
champs.
radar,
Did
too.
you?
Yeah, I did.
And that's talking to JP Graham. They have 35 guys out,
really?
Wow, nice.
and for them, for some
I'm not
schools,
surprised
it's
about
like
that at all. JP's a great guy, and he's magnetic. So
yeah,
he'll bring it in.
and he's
Wow.
he's got head coaching experience. Soccer program has been one of the best in the
Fabulous,
area.
yeah.
But he said it was just one of those things where, we've tried to make it fun, and now we're getting kids out, and that's the start.
key.
Get the numbers out, get kids vested in. He's even high on a couple junior high kids that'll be coming in next year as freshmen that could add a boost
Nice.
as well. So it's a program that's been down a little bit. Still, it's a smaller school tournament.
Well, and they had 2 champs,
But-
like you said, Aiden Abram at 126 and at 285 Tate Socorro Mathis.
Yep.
And nice job. And also Joe Foreman was 2nd.
Yeah.
So Foreman name's very familiar.
And it was cool to also see guys in the corner yelling and stuff for cheering for their teammates or cheering them on, sitting
the teammates.
together, because you could kind of tell there was something that maybe you didn't see out of the Washington team in the past, which was kind of cool.
That's
so. And one other thing too. 220, the final at 220. I'll admit, Bosher of Mid Prairie, Cale Garvey, the name will ring a bell. But at 220, is it Josh Wallington or John?
Josh.
He gave Ethan Alley of Belle Plaine all that he wanted. That was a match that wasn't decided until the final ticks of the clock, literally, when Alley got a takedown to win 4-3. Probably the more exciting finishes. And this is Ethan Alley, who placed at the Keith Young tournament for Belle Plaine and is a state medalist. And here, Wallington took him right down, almost came away with a victory, but a good showing by him. And those three guys, those upperweight wrestlers for Mid Prairie, are pretty impressive.
What impressed me with Mid Prairie, because I was down in Fort Madison on Thursday evening, was the numbers that Mid Prairie has out. I mean,
Really?
they had a nice JV lineup as well. So
You guys weren't listening last week when I spoke of the Makokata.
Oh.
No, I'm sorry. You're saying Mid Prairie.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Never mind.
You meant Midland.
I was saying
Midland, yeah,
Yep,
so-
my fault. Yep.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
Midbury had nice numbers.
I
out.
always felt bad for a second. I was like, oh my
But
gosh.
Midland's
Sorry,
doing a nice
coach.
job as well. So,
I was wondering, what did I miss
so
again?
I'm not listening.
So, the Fort Madison, you got to catch some of the action down there.
I did. I was down there. Kennedy won it. They had 3 champs. Long at 106. Jay Ostendorf, of course, from Cole, and then Josh Fish at heavyweight. That's a nice tournament. They got a Liberty out of Wentzville. Comes up to that. They kind of exchange.
Is that Missouri?
Missouri.
So
Just
there's
outside of
18
St. Louis.
teams there, and it's a 2-day tournament.
Yeah, and it's basically the same format as the Independence tournament. Pool play on Friday, and 2 8-man brackets on Saturday. He kind of goofed up, so it wasn't a true third, but Solon finished 5th with a couple champs, and Hayden Taylor was the outstanding wrestler, which I helped sponsor this year, the Thomas Wall Jasper Outstanding Wrestler.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
Named after a wrestler from, I think he was a place or tournament champion back in the early 2000s, like 3 and 4, and his place winner around 11, or I think he was killed in a car accident in 2011, and his parents passed out the award, which was
Oh, that's
very,
really
nice.
cool.
Very nice.
yeah, it was really really nice.
Good for you and good for the Bloodhound coaching staff.
Yeah, but and we'll get into this after we get off. But Hempstead was a runner-up, and not that it was it was a nice tournament for a lot of these schools in getting a lot of good matches in. Some of the weights, like 106, there was only eight wrestlers in 106. Which to me, I guess, is kind of disappointing. I like
Out of
see
18
more
teams.
Out of 18
Yeah.
teams,
Yeah.
so they only had the gold bracket. But Fort Madison finished 3rd with a half point out behind Hempstead. It's just a nice all-around tournament. Ran well. We were done by 3:30 in the afternoon on Saturday. So.
Well, here's maybe the depth thing too. I noticed that Solon had 3 champs, and finished 5th as a team. So that's kind of what we saw when we saw Solon there. Some very strong individuals. Their champs were Hayden Taylor, obviously the OW, and then Zeb Ganida and Jack Splin. And so they can start filling in those holes. That's a tough chore sometimes, but that's when Solon will, I think, be a better dual meet and tournament team.
Yeah, and Ostendorf, it was a first period pin, but it got in a little bit of a scramble, and he was on his back for about 5 seconds and rolled through and pinned.
I was thinking, just on my way over actually, I was thinking that Dad probably got a chance to see him. They were in the Desert Duels this year.
He was down on Friday night, but I think he went to. He was going someplace else on Saturday because.
So I get to see him a little bit then.
Yes, yeah, he was down on Friday
cool.
and got to watch. Sat in the stands and visited with him for a while. So.
A couple other results too. Williamsburg, which used to go to Northland to compete, they went to the Doug Phillip Duels at Xavier. They swept the field there, came away with a team title. Again, we've talked about how impressive Williamsburg has been. West Liberty second. A couple notes there. Will Esmoyle of West Liberty notched his 150th victory there. Also, one of the matches I was kind of interested in was at 138 between Jalen Schropp and Christian Stanek. Schropp of Williamsburg, Stanek of Xavier. And Schropp came away with a win. I think won decisively there as well. So good performances.
I've been impressed with Schropp. I've got to see him now twice.
Couple times,
and yeah, he's
a
I've
real
been
deal.
impressed. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when Hayden Taylor gets down to 38, and possibly the matchup between those two at the Walnut Conference tournament. That could be worth the price of admission there as well. Regina hosted its tournament as well. Tipton came away with a team title, I believe. Tipton coached by Matt Neerum. They had 2 champs in Austin Lenz and Lucas Barnum, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, what I thought could be kind of a interesting matchup at 195. 2 guys that have kind of been like right on the edge of my area rankings. Rowan Udell of Regina improved to 15-0 with a win over Tyler Thurston of North Cedar, who is 16-3 now. 4-1 decision there at 195, and those are two guys that are off to good starts for some small school teams.
And even Davenport West got a 3rd place finish out of that tournament, which with a couple of the Davenport schools struggling, I thought that was.
They were in Macokota last weekend.
Mentioned. See, I was listening. I
that's
listened
what
to
I
you.
mentioned. Yeah, that's. I didn't get a chance to look at the results. Southeast Polk is where Jefferson usually goes. I think. I'm pretty sure Southeast Polk won that. I could be going out on a limb here, but
I'm not even sure where they went.
I think
that wasn't the Red Owens, was
yes.
it?
Yeah, the Red Owens. Yeah.
Yes, the Red Owens.
Yeah.
And pull it up right here. Southeast Polk came away with the title. 342.5 points.
Yeah, they won
Bettendorf
it.
was second with 231.5.
Oh, I forgot Mendorf was there, weren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, and Cedar Rapids Jefferson finished 5th. You want to get a good gauge on your depth when you finish 1st and 4th.
Southeast Polk's.
Yeah.
So second team.
So yeah, Southeast Polk Black finished 4th with 126.
And Iowa City West
points.
was there also, huh?
I think that was their JV, maybe. Was it? No, it was
No,
their varsity.
It was their varsity.
So they don't go to McChesney?
No, they didn't go. They're not going
Dvorak
this year.
was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
Well, it's
The Dvorak.
It's Dvorak
Dvorak
at
is-
McKesney Park.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Illinois.
Mhm.
Usually they go, but the way Christmas is this year, it's kind of weird being right in the middle of the week because you still have that full weekend to participate with it being shoved on the end of the weeks. You don't. So, excuse me. Grant Odell was a runner-up to a really fabulous freshman for Southeast Polk. I'll butcher his last name.
Because we struggle with the rankings with him.
Yesaroga.
Yeah, whatever his name is.
Yeah. Nathaniel. We'll just call him Nathaniel J. But keep an eye out on him because he's doing really well. Cedar Rapids Jefferson with a runner-up at 120 and Austin Clifton.
All right. Good job, Austin.
And, of course, Hunter Garvin. With a title at 132 who looked really, really good in the duel that we saw him
I know the Garvin's watched.
last Thursday. Graham Gambrell, also a runner-up for Iowa City West at 152. And then looking here at heavyweight, Dawson Sweet of Cedar Rapids Jefferson came away with a title to improve to 14-1 as well at heavyweight. So a couple finalists there for the Jayhawks, and Dawson Sweet, who is right in the mix in a really
Yes, he is.
really competitive heavyweight class here in the area.
Yeah. Because without looking off the top of my head, because I'd say we got him ranked probably 3rd or 4th.
I thought last I saw was 3rd, maybe.
Yeah, and that's pretty competitive. Fort Dodge, Don Miller, Miller Invitational. Fort Dodge had 6 champions, 3 runner-up. So they kind of went away with that with Ankeny Centennial, and Centennial had 3 champions to finish runner-up over there. Just throughout that Fort Dodge team.
Did I see Fort Dodge and Southeast Polk wrestled in a duel?
Yes,
Thursday
I think
evening.
Thursday
Is that right?
beforehand.
And did Southeast Polk win?
Yes.
I didn't see a score.
I can't remember what the score
Was it
but they
close,
did.
or-
I can
One of those matchup things.
I can
We're kind of
look that
spread
up
out
really
with
quick.
same teams, but we haven't really nailed down 3A yet. So it's kind of right now. Southeast Polk you have to throw in, obviously.
Yeah, and
Waverly Shell Rock.
that may be, that's one of those classes with Southeast Polk, Fort Dodge, Bettendorf,
Fort Dodge, yeah.
Waverly.
And Bettendorf, I don't know that they're there yet right now. So
Well, and
But-
Waverly's been moving up too.
yeah, I mean Bettendorf's darn close. Don't get me wrong,
yes.
but I'm not. I don't know. They're all over the place, so you don't see them. If that was Bettendorf's varsity and Southeast Polk put it to them in that tournament, pretty good at
Yeah,
that.
37-19. Southeast Polk came away with a
Okay, so
team victory.
fairly decisive there.
Yeah, so
Fort Dodge's 3 guys probably were the winners. Yeah, Taylor and
Drazon Phillips also won at 138. Brandon Mills at 145. Cody Cook of 160 for Fort Dodge were the ones that came away for the Dodgers with a win. So
yeah, that's a nice little tournament. I went to that a year ago and
Well,
with Lewis
that was
Central.
the duel.
that was the duel.
That was the duel.
The
duel
tournament,
in
yeah,
Southeast Polk.
yeah. The tournament is nice. I won a year ago and see some of the western schools, I guess, or further west, I
Yeah.
should say.
Nice opportunity to see that.
Yeah, kind of like your Northland. You get to see your area schools and
Right. So, all right. Well, I think that wraps it up. You
I
have
got
something?
one final question.
Okay.
We'll go back to Christmas now.
Okay.
What is your favorite Christmas tradition?
Jeepers.
You guys throw this out at me, and I'm a slow thinker, so
Yeah.
I
Well-
gotta have a day to think about this stuff.
I've got a couple, and it's mainly because I'm like super sentimental. One of the things that we do, because we are Catholic, we celebrate Advent. So we have candy canes on our tree that each Sunday of Advent, we all pick one off. It's just kind of a countdown a little bit. So each Sunday of Advent, we grab the candy canes and have them. It's just kind of a goofy one. But the big one is on Christmas Eve, I read a handful of books. Twas the Night Before Christmas, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, even all the way down, I can't remember the name of it, but it was about a little hedgehog that was in the Christmas play that I read to them when they were like 2-3 years old, and they still
Look
asked
forward
me to
it,
read.
yeah.
So I read those things before we go to bed on Christmas Eve.
Well, even though our kids are pretty much grown up, we still stuff stockings and do that. But it's just about family, being with family, my own personal family, and then extended families, and for me that's the biggie. I mean, we have all sorts of different traditions that we do, but I don't know that I have a favorite. I like them all.
Yeah. And mine would be, of course, growing up on the farm, we do our chores, go to church, come home and have oyster stew.
Really?
Yeah, that was our Christmas Eve.
That's what we do.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'm
and
the only one that likes oyster stew, so it's
yeah, well,
and my mom.
Well,
I've never had oyster stew.
and the thing is, growing up, we just dipped it out of the bulk tank. That was our milk. We didn't buy
Oh
milk.
boy.
Yeah. And so it's a lot different than it is now. We got to add a lot of butter to it now. But Kirsten and I, we still do the oyster stew on Christmas Eve.
Oh,
yeah.
cool. Very
So,
cool.
We do soup on
anyway,
Christmas Eve,
that was my question for the day.
Yeah, so those are all pretty neat. And it's like you said, it boils down to sharing that with
Yeah.
family and friends, and look forward to that. And of course, we wish everybody a happy holiday for watching along this year. By the next time we see you, it'll be 2020. So we wish everybody happy holidays and happy New Year. Again, check out all the content at thepredicament.com and follow Wyatt along at,
Predicament_IA on Twitter and the Predicament on Facebook.
and you can follow me at KJ Pilcher on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook as well.
Don't follow me.
Don't follow
I have
Coach
nothing
Briggs.
I have nothing to follow.
All right. So we appreciate all your support and watching. Thank you very much. Thank you for Steven for stepping in. If it wasn't for him,
Thank you.
Steven Schmidt, we wouldn't be able to brought you one more before the end of the year. So thank you for stepping in for Nathan during this holiday week. And we'll leave you with our tagline, and thanks for watching, everybody.
Let's keep wrestling on the move.